flood victims in Cedar Falls cope with their recent losses. Good evening, everyone.
Some Cedar Falls children are having a hard time understanding why this flood had to affect their lives so much. So the North Cedar School counselor spent time with K through 6th grade students today. The students were encouraged to talk about what they're going through at home. 3rd grader Brooke Olmsted says these sessions help. She says many items she values are destroyed and it's hard to see them out here on the curb.
Well, we left our carpet, and that was good. And we left our Nintendo, our TV, and we were supposed to be making a game room down there.
Inside, water still covers the basement floors. It will be some time before the cleaning is finished. Many families are in need of the essentials like children's clothing, cleaning items, paint and brushes, books and toys, and even furniture and appliances. If you have something that you can donate, please take it to North Cedar School or just call them at this number. It's 266-2614, and they are also organizing volunteers for cleanup efforts. Just how bad is the flooding in eastern Iowa? The Federal Emergency Management Agency is trying to find out. FEMA officials toured several areas of eastern Iowa today that were hit hardest by the disaster. Representatives say they're compiling a list of sites that will be included in a report to the governor. The report will outline areas that could qualify for federally funded assistance.
The high water is also having an impact tonight on the mighty Mississippi River. Barges south of Muscatine have come to a halt at Lock and Dam 17. But as Joan Havel tells us, steps are being taken to make sure river traffic is not stopped at Bellevue and Dubuque.
This is only the second time in 4 years that the lock and dam gates in Dubuque have had to be lifted due to high water. It allows more water to flow south and prevents flooding above the dam. The lock and dam system is set up to help control river levels on the Mississippi, but that isn't necessarily its purpose during a flood situation. Officials explain why they take the gates and pull them up out of the water.
We maintain a 9-foot channel here, and it's strictly for navigation. When it gets up to that point, approximately 10.6, 10.7 on the tailwater, we open the gates and let it flow through because we no longer have control over it to maintain the 9-foot channel.
In Dubuque, there are 2 river level gauges. The city gauge is located on this railroad bridge where flood stage is 17 feet. The second is at the lock and dam where flood stage is 16 feet.
So when they read in the paper what Dubuque's going to crest at, it doesn't necessarily mean that's what it's going to do at the lock and dam.
River stage at the lock and dam is currently at 14.5 feet. Once the water level drops, the gates will once again be lowered back into the river. In Dubuque, I'm Joan Havel for Iowa's News Channel.
Joan says the river level at Dubuque is expected to be low enough by tomorrow to put the dam gates back in to the water.
Well, of course, the worst of the flooding is now over, but the memories remain.
That's right, Liz, and so do many of the remarkable images. Tonight, we're going to take a short look back at the flood of '93. There just seems to be something intriguing, if not hypnotic, about the sheer awesome power of raging floodwaters. Not since 1961 had the waters of the Cedar River been this high in downtown Waterloo. Why did it happen? Well, it was a combination of factors. The winter snowmelt of northern Iowa and southern Minnesota, plus the recent heavy rainfalls of the area, and a lingering frost, all combining at about the same time to create nearly ideal flooding conditions. The potential flood victims, luckily, had plenty of warning.
Basically, get everything up that you can get up and go from there. You know, when it's all done, clean up and go on. That's all we can do.
Once again, Beaver Creek at New Hartford gave us a glimpse of just what was to come.
There's a lot more houses this time than there has ever been, because we've never had water in this house before.
By Tuesday, March 30th, New Hartford was once again inundated.
The 2 floods 2 years ago, the one flood didn't quite get up behind the house. The second one got 5 feet. This one was 2 feet. In the basement, I had about a 2-foot wide hole that was just gushing water.
For a bird's eye view of the flooding conditions, we took to the air just as the water at New Hartford crested at about 5.5 feet over flood stage. As you can see, much of the community had been consumed by the flood waters. New Hartford, you see, has no culverts for runoff, and residents wonder just how many more times they'll have to endure high water situations before a solution to their flooding problems can be found. Just one look at this kind of messy cleanup can help you understand why New Hartford residents are growing a little impatient when it comes to annual flooding. While Beaver Creek had crested, Cedar Falls and Waterloo readied for the biggest flood in 32 years on the Cedar River. The water rose quickly, and as usual, Waterloo closed the Fletcher Avenue floodgate because of flooding at Hope Martin Park. But this year, there seemed to be a new sense of urgency. Floodgates like this one on Westfield Avenue, which had never been used before, were assembled and put into place. On the Park Avenue Bridge downtown, for the first time ever, city workers removed the panels from the trenches so they could install portable flood walls.
It's good practice for us. For the next flood, we can use this experience to our benefit.
And on the old 6th Street Railroad Bridge downtown, loaded rail cars were left on the tracks to keep that bridge from being swept away by the swiftly rising river currents.
If the water gets much higher, it's going to hit the sides of the bridge, and that'll put a lot of pressure on the bridge. So to keep the bridge from washing out, they put these railroad cars. They're loaded full of tallow and some kinds of other ingredients that won't, pollute the river if they would happen to go in. It's non-hazardous materials, and it'll hold the bridge in place if the water gets much higher.
I never thought it'd ever happen. But at least I still got a home anyhow.
By Thursday, April 1st, the waters had flooded the Cedar City area of Cedar Falls. There were more than 70 evacuations all told, as Cedar Falls residents were forced from their homes and businesses by the floodwaters of the Cedar River.
We've been pulling people out of their houses that have stayed in their houses and decided the water's getting deeper than it should be. Now they decide they don't want to stay anymore. So we've been busy. We've hauled 40 or 50 people out here today.
We're concerned that no one is going to take the responsibility for this change in the flow in the water, and that we're going to be stuck every year like this.
The scene was much the same in Waterloo. At one point, employees of the city's pollution control plant were stranded by the floodwaters which had covered the roads leading to the plant on Easton Avenue. This end loader was actually washed right off the road by the swift currents, leaving 2 employees with no place to go. An Army Iowa National Guard helicopter was flown in from the airport to rescue employees Gary Simmons and Larry Smith. Plant worker Jack Lonigan captured that rescue on his home camcorder for us. Pilots Douglas Wyberney and Ray Murphy set that Huey chopper right down on the end loader, while Crew Chief Sergeant Scott Hilliard tried to get the men on board. At one point, Gary Simmons almost lost his footing on the first try, but the guardsmen kept their cool, and in a matter of moments, Simmons was on board the chopper and on his way back to dry land. Moments later, the Huey was back again to pick up Larry Smith and carry him to safety. Residents will long remember some of these pictures from the hardest hit areas of Waterloo Cedar Falls. The Cedar River crested at 20.5 feet. That was a little more than 1 foot below the 1961 record crest of 21.8. But the Greenwood Avenue Sherwood Park area of the city sustained some of its worst flooding in memory. This aerial view gives you quite a perspective of the overall flooding magnitude of the Waterloo Cedar Falls area. No April Fool here. This is how Municipal Stadium, home of the Waterloo Diamonds, looked on April 1st. The Waterloo Greyhound Park had to cancel a performance. The dogs could not get from the kennels to the track because of the floodwaters. And damage from the broken dike at George Wythe State Park is estimated at $200,000 alone. Those floodwaters stranded hundreds of deer, and it will be months before the impact on the fish population is determined. And of course, there's the Sans Souci neighborhood of Waterloo. Sans Souci is a French saying which means without worry. But residents of this famous quarter-mile Waterloo Island had plenty to worry about with the flood of '93.
I didn't believe it ever happened again. I mean, I think I was in a state of shock when I drove in from out of town last night and thought they were having a party in Sans Souci and we were having a flood.
Waterloo escaped this flood of '93 with no loss of life, and there is no doubt the city's multi-million-dollar flood control system saved millions of dollars in flood damages, while giving residents a real trip down memory lane.
But I can remember sandbagging when I was in high school, and it was a little more exciting then, but it's about as high as I've seen it.
I wondered about this dike when they talk about a 100-year flood. Well, now we're seeing it, I guess. So it's, I'm sure glad the Corps of Engineers put it into the city of Waterloo.
It really is, like you said at the beginning, almost hypnotizing, mesmerizing.
Yeah. Something about flooding. I think the best story I heard a lady tell some people that she saw a casket float by her
home. I assume it was empty. But,
Oh, well, let's hope so.
But I think that's the thing, you know, there's so many other things, Cedar Rapids and the Palo area, Chelsea, up around the Wapsie and Turkey.
Belle Plaine,
really, you can't even do
yeah.
it justice, all the areas that were impacted by the water. We just want to kind of show some of the images around this area that will stay with us for a long time, I think, yeah.
That was good. Thanks, Ron.
Okay.